Rushworth Brown, host of Down Under Interviews, History Bards, and Meet the Author in the USA. Author today, Michele Torrey, better known as Emmy Torrey, who has written a fantastic book called Fox Creek. Michele, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'm really happy to be here.
Okay, so Fox Creek blends historical adventure with an eerie emotional undercurrent. What first pulled you toward the story and the history of these characters or the darker mysteries beneath it?
Okay, so kind of a long, convoluted answer. Fox Creek takes place in Louisiana, and I am born and bred Northern girl, so I had never been to Louisiana before. When my husband had a conference in New Orleans, he asked me if I wanted to come. I said yes. I'd never been. And so, being an author of young adult novels, I thought I will base a ghost story in New Orleans, write it off. Everything's good. So I go to New Orleans, having done some basic research. And instead, what happened was I found myself pulled to the history of the plantations.
In 1843, a young girl is torn from the world she knew and brought deep into the harsh reality of Louisiana's plantation life. At Fox Creek, Monette grows up between lines she did not draw. Lines that decide who belongs, who serves, and who survives. Childhood slips away. Silence becomes protection. And every day, the weight of the place presses harder. Cyrus, the boy taken with her, grows into the steady presence in the fields, the one who watches over her when no one else will. But danger doesn't always shout. Sometimes it stands at a distance, just watching. When the planter's son begins to notice her, out gathering wood, in quiet corners, in passing glances, the ground beneath her feet shifts.
And especially to the history and legacy of slavery. So I toured a lot of plantations, and that idea of writing a book about that would not leave me. And so I completely changed trajectory and started researching for a novel for adults, which I had never written for an adult audience before. So it was totally new. Ended up doing about 3 years of full-time research. And then this Northern girl wrote a book happening on a Southern plantation, which some professional reviewers have said it's one of the best antebellum novels they've ever read.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that you have written a number of sort of young adult books. What's
Yes.
the huge difference? What's the difference?
It's different. It's difficult to quantify, but I would say for me the difference is first of all length. You can't get longer than 60,000 words for the most part, unless you're J.K. Rowling. You can't get longer than 60,000 words for a YA audience. You have to be careful of your thematic materials because if it's too dark, you could get really shut down. You also have to be careful of how you present things, how you word things. Again, you can be shut down. And I had a hard enough time with the adventure stories that I wrote, such that some of my books were banned in certain states. So I got in some trouble for some of the young adult stuff that I wrote, and wasn't always on everybody's good page.
Okay.
But with writing for adults, sorry about that. With writing for adults, sky's the limit. You can write about what you want. So I find an incredible freedom in writing for adults that I didn't have writing for YA.
So is there any naughty bits in it?
There are just a few. Really naughty.
Naughty bits.
Yeah, that would not make it into a YA book.
Yeah. So there's some great characters. Monette. Tell me where she came from.
Honestly, this many years later, I'm not sure I know where she came from. Now, I will say that in the book, we have one character, Monette, who is a biracial daughter of a plantation owner who was raised with a silver spoon in her mouth until about 6 years old, at which time her father dies, she's sold into slavery. And then she's purchased by a family that has a daughter the same age, Kate, and they become playmates, which was not uncommon. And I wanted to see the divergent way that their lives progress. At first, it seems like all is well, and then one goes this way, not by choice, and one goes this way. And I found it a fascinating character study. I'm not quite sure how I came up with that idea to begin with. often I come up with my ideas when I do my research, and a true story will jump out at me, and I go, oh, well, that should be in my book. And so I just kind of, you know, put them all together, and I come up with my fiction novel.
With Monette being biracial, um, was there anything that you had to be really, really careful when you were writing her character?
Mm. Well, I think I will have to be more careful in the future. In like, there's going to be a book 2 and book 3 when she's in the fields, and I have to be more careful when she's exposed to more of the life of a slave. As it is in book
Yeah.
1, she is one of the household servants. So, and because she has such closeness with the white family, it wasn't as difficult to write her character.
Mhm. So Monette, protagonist, is driven by loyalty, trauma, and unfinished business. Which of
Yes.
those threads came to you first, and how did the others grow around it?
I think the trauma came to me first of what would happen to a 6-year-old child thrust into this situation. They have no idea what's happening to them. Their father is gone. And as we find out later in the book, gone quite tragically. And she was witness to that, but has suppressed her memories. The loyalty came later when she is trying to replace that sense of home and family for herself. The suppression of her memories is how she deals with this horrific trauma.
I mean, I a similar thing happened to me when I was young. When I was about probably about 8 years old. I was put
Mhm.
into a foster home, and it's for a young kid for that to happen, be taken away from what you know and love. I mean, it's a huge thing to deal with, and
Yeah,
you deal with it your whole life.
Two women shaped his life, a mother who refused to break, and a wife who met every storm with courage. Their stories lived in the shadows until he finally stepped forward to tell them. A Letter Unwritten is the journey of a son looking back at sacrifice, at survival, at the quiet heroism of women the world rarely notices, but families never forget. From the trauma that marked his childhood to the fear of becoming the man he swore he'd never be, this is a story of confronting the past and finding the strength to choose a different path. Through his mother Jo's resilience and Bonnie's enduring love, Randy discovers that even the hardest stories can lead to healing, if someone is brave enough to. A Letter Unwritten, the memoir that honours two extraordinary women and the son changed forever.
yeah,
Okay, so
I can
um,
imagine.
yeah, so the wilderness in Fox Creek almost feels like a character in its own right. It's unpredictable, hostile. Um, when you said before the show that you actually spent a bit of time down in New Orleans, tell me about that.
Yeah, so, only a little bit of my time really was spent in New Orleans. The rest was spent in a town called St. Francisville. And let me back up and say that New Orleans was founded by the French, and so it's still a very French place. Um, and then a lot of Louisiana was influenced by the French. But when you go up the Mississippi north and a little bit to the east, there's a place called English Louisiana. And it's where the English settlers who came from the eastern seaboard fled during the Revolutionary War if they were sympathetic to the crown. Okay, they were fleeing their own countrymen. And uh, this place in Louisiana was one of the places that they settled. And it's
Mm,
actually quite different from the swampy areas, lowland areas down around New Orleans, which is actually below water level. Um,
right.
up in English Louisiana, it's more flowing creeks and foxes, and hence the name Fox Creek, and then lots of nice piney woods. So
Yeah,
very,
I mean,
very different wilderness.
yeah, it's definitely so. How did your visit? How did it sort of like shape the atmosphere in the novel?
Uh, I had a journal with me, and sometimes I was there by myself, I would have my daily adventure planned. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to go there, I'm going to see this place, talk to this person, that kind of thing. And in the evening or during a coffee break, I would sit down and I would write out in my journal all of my impressions, my physical impressions, my emotions, how somebody might have spoken, And so it's all there in my journals. Plus, I got all kinds of primary letters, diaries, journals from plantation owners and slaves that lived in Louisiana during that time. And so I also noted their emotions, the way that they reacted to, let's say, the weather or hunting or whatever it might be. And I recorded all of that so that I
Yeah.
could put it in when it was time.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, you seem to write about danger and that psychological tension with a lot of clarity. Were any scenes emotionally difficult for you to write?
Uh, it's really strange. I don't find any scene difficult to write, no matter
No,
how emotionally fraught it might be.
really?
I will say I don't know. I have like this ironclad writer belly. I don't know how to put it, but I'm
Oh,
able to distance myself, I guess, from from what is happening in my book and able to just be there in the movie and record it. So there is
okay.
one scene which I found immensely tragic. And there's this saying, it's no tears in the writer, no tears in the reader. Okay. So if you're not shedding tears as the reader's not going to shed tears. So okay, so it's a really tearful scene. So I have this soundtrack that I really like, and it's got the mood captured perfectly with this bass flute throughout and wind that just howls, and I've got it on repeat. And then I'm writing, and I'm a good typist, so I'm able to close my eyes as I type. And as I close my eyes, I'm weeping and weeping, and then this is cycling through the music, and then and so even though I'm able to write it and it doesn't scare me, I do feel it.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. And I mean, one thing that stands out is your balance between sort of like your character arcs and the the suspense. How do you keep that mix right?
yeah, I think that the ability to do that comes from writing adventures for young adults, 60,000 word novels for young adults that are edge of your seat, nail biting adventures. You
Yeah,
have to learn how to do that because a young adult's not going to give you 2 seconds to get their attention. You've
yeah,
got to get it and you've got to keep it and never let it go. And so that translates into my adult novel. Not that it's a traditional page turner like a murder mystery or anything like that. But I do try to make sure that I keep leading my reader on and I don't let them go.
so the moral choices in Fox Creek are fairly complicated. So you've got survival, you've got loyalty, you've got justice, revenge. Which moral dilemma do you think will stick with readers?
I
I
think
know these are pretty heavy questions.
right, they are heavy, and it does remind me of a point I want to circle back to. But first, I want to say probably survival, because
Yeah,
Monette, as an example, didn't ask for what happened to her. She's a pawn in somebody else's game. She has no control over this situation, like the other slaves that are with her. None of them have a choice about what's happening to them. And the ingenious ways that they think of to survive, and even the very tiny rebellious moments that they have, are ways that they keep their humanity and
mm,
keep surviving even in those dark times.
yeah. I mean, the I've seen the promo ad, and Mon- Monette seems like such a beautiful um, Creole. Is that how you say it? Creole?
Yeah, Creole.
Um, yeah,
Yes.
Creole sort of a beautiful character, um, and fascinating, fascinating.
Yeah.
Is
She was actually, believe it or not, as the main character, my most difficult character.
really, why is that?
Well, because her character comes out of this huge trauma.
Mm,
And as in dealing with her trauma, she suppresses her memories. So that's why I struggled with her character. I wanted her to be sympathetic and yet stay true to this trauma that she had experienced while she resolves that.
wonderful. Now we've spoken a lot about Monette and as the protagonist. How do you how did you develop the antagonist? How did you
Ooh,
make him feel real?
yeah. So William, really, there are only a couple of antagonists, and you might even argue that they're also, at least William is also a protagonist. He kind of rides the line there. William came from a diary that I read called Plantation Life in the Florida Parishes, 1843 to 1846, written by
Wow.
written by William Bennett Barrow. And the Florida parishes are those English Louisiana parishes in French
Yeah.
Louisiana. Okay, they were just called the Florida parishes back then. And it's just his plantation journal. So it might be as mundane as, Wednesday, cloudy, had a gang out on the, back 40 hoeing cotton, set the women to spinning. He's got a cotton plantation. And so they're spinning cotton. And then the next day it might be, raining, went to a fish fry at so-and-so's house, had a great time, danced all night, And then the next day had to whip the whole gang because all they did yesterday was a half day's work. And he
Wow.
just says it like he said he was going to a party.
Yeah.
So he did all of his own plantation management. He did not have an overseer because he felt like overseers didn't have as much invested in it as he did. And he felt like if he had the rules all outlined and all of the slaves know those rules and they know the infractions and they know what they're going to get for the infractions, okay, 10 lashes for this, da-da-da for this, that they behave. That was his model. And so when somebody was disobedient, he would enact those punishments. But to me, what was interesting, now he was a fascinating character because I found myself liking him very much. And
Right.
here's this man who can hold a tiny baby bird in his hands and notice the colors of the feather and then let it go and just like go, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. And so you think, well, if I met him in real life, I'd probably really like him. And then there's this brutal side to him that was an acceptable side in society at that time. And so I thought, how do I straddle that line of having this person that my readers actually engage with and think is like themselves and yet is capable of perpetrating these kinds of cruelties? It was extremely difficult. I had to go back over and over again and just tweak it. Sometimes it made me ill to write what I was going to write about him.
Senlac, a two-part historical novel by Julian Delamotte, immerses readers in the turbulent period leading to the Norman conquest of England in 1066. The novel vividly portrays a kingdom in crisis following the death of King Edward the Confessor. Harold, the Earl of Wessex, is hastily crowned king but faces immediate threats from Viking and Norman invaders. With meticulous research, Senlac brings to life the battles and intricate politics of the era. This meticulously crafted work is poised to be a landmark in historical fiction, captivating fans with its authenticity and emotional depth.
Okay, one scene that you believe, and I don't want you to give any spoilers away, but one scene that you believe actually represents Fox Creek.
It's a scene that happens out in the fields. Now, William's the plantation owner. He's the one who has this character of you like him, but he also perpetrates evil. And then he has a son, Breck, who he's trying to raise to be a plantation owner like himself and to actually fill his shoes someday. And he starts taking Breck out into the fields when Breck is only 10 years old, 8 years old, somewhere around there. And they're both on horses. They go out to the field. Now, William employs, and I use the word employ very loosely because they're his slaves, so he doesn't actually pay them. But he employs 3 what he calls slave drivers. And the slave drivers would be like an overseer. And so they are 3 well-respected people in his slave force, men who direct the forces out in the fields. Okay, you team over here today, you're going to do this, and so on. And so once he starts going out into the fields, one of the drivers, Quincy, comes up to him and he says, we've got a problem today. And it's that new. And he said, well, he refuses to work alongside everybody else. And I told him, Mars Williams says, everybody has to work together, that it works better that way. And he refused. He said, no. And he said, then go to the whipping post because you know what happens. Mars Williams going to come. And he refused. So Mars William goes over to Sonny, where Sonny is hoeing all by himself. And the whole field of people stops what they're doing, and they're all watching. And of course, Breck has to go too, even though he's feeling ill in his stomach. And so William asks Sonny, you know, why don't you have Quincy say his bit, and then I'll let you say yours. And so Quincy repeats what he said, and then he says, okay, Sonny, you say your bit. So Sonny starts saying, you know, Mars Blackstone used to allow me to hoe by myself. And then William cuts him off, and he says, well, I can't allow that because work goes faster if you hoe together. Here's why. And Sonny keeps getting interrupted by William as Sonny's trying to say his part. And finally, Sonny looks right in William's eye, which you're not allowed to do as a slave. You're not allowed to look a white person in the eye. And he says, you said I could say my part.
Okay. One of the characters I was interested in was Cyrus.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Cyrus,
he was
yes.
He was sort of like almost like a Monette's protector.
Right. Yes. So Cyrus that is correct. He's 10 years old at the time that Monette is 6, and he is sold in New Orleans along with Monette at the same slave auction, purchased by the same slave family. They didn't start out together. They made friends along the trail, so to speak. And he becomes her protector in the slave pen while they're waiting for auction and so on. And they have a love for one another at that time. And that love for her never leaves him. And so he becomes this field hand. And at the end of the book, he's 20 years old, and he still loves her, even though she's a housemaid. And field hands, I don't know if you know this, but field hands don't mix with housemaids. They've got their own hierarchy. And anyway, he's never forgotten her, always has loved her, always will protect her.
I want to change this. What's one scene that you would say absolutely not? I can't change that. It's an integral part, most important part of the story.
She had always identified with this white family from the time she was purchased, as she pretended they were her family. This is part of how she was getting through her trauma.
Yeah.
And on this day, this mother turns to her, let me clarify, you're not my daughter. Okay, you are a maid, and you are to take care of these children. And I will now, you know, you can't take dance lessons anymore with Kate. You can't ride the pony anymore with Kate. And she goes down this list of things she can no longer do. You are a maid. Do you understand? And this poor little girl is standing there and saying, yes, I understand. And then she's holding her tears. She runs down the steps out into the privy, outside the outhouse. It's horribly hot. It's the middle of summer. Into the privy she goes, and she just weeps away all of that trauma, and just it's broken her. That's a moment of her breaking. And that has to stay there.
Yeah. Wow. That's intense. I can see sort of like the passion sort of like coming through your speech about that particular and how important that scene is to you. And I suppose to part of the book.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to do 10 quick fire questions.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
Michelle.
Ready?
All right. So I'm just going to fire them at you, and that you just have one answer back as fast as you can. Okay? Mountains or rivers?
Mountains.
Light or shadow?
Light.
Revenge or justice?
Justice.
Storm or silence?
Storm.
Compass or instinct?
Compass.
Whisper or scream?
Whisper.
Fire or ice?
Ooh, fire.
Hero or survivor?
Survivor.
Truth or myth?
Truth. Past
or future?
Past. So many of those I want to answer both.
Michelle, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. And
thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Paul. I appreciate it. It was great.
Yeah, and a lot of fun. And I can't wait for your book to get out there. It certainly deserves a lot of credit.
Thank you. Thank you very much.